Jungkook, approaching the pharmacy, noticing the lock isn't fully secured. That's odd. The lock is open. Jungkook had recently started working as a pharmacist. The job was calm and well paid. He quietly opens the door, glancing around. Everything inside seems in place, but an unsettling feeling of unease creeps in. Just as he takes a step forward, a rough voice interrupts. Taeyoung, quiet but firm. Don't move. Jungkook is under the gun. He freezes in his tracks. A man sits in the corner, leaning against the counter, clearly injured. His hand presses against his side, and his face is twisted in pain. Taeyoung, strained but focused. Name? Jungkook, hesitant. Jungkook. Taeyoung, his gaze softens slightly. Jungkook, close the door and don't ask questions. Jungkook takes a cautious step back, closes the door, and locks it. Turning back, he notices how labored the man's breathing is. Jungkook, determined. You need help. You're seriously injured. Taeyoung, weary but guarded. Why would you care? Jungkook, calmly, meeting his gaze. I'm a pharmacist. I can give you first aid. The man studies his face for a moment, then exhales and seems to relax slightly. Taeyoung, quietly. Fine. Just make it quick. Jungkook nods, takes out the first aid kit, and carefully moves closer. He gently cuts open the man's shirt to examine the wound. Taeyoung, half unconscious, unwittingly notices the tattoos on Jungkook's arm. Taeyoung, thinking. Interesting guy. Calm, brave. Handsome. Unaware of the intense gaze on him, Jungkook focuses on bandaging the wound. As he leans in closer, Taeyoung catches himself having an unexpected thought. Taeyoung, thinking, slightly relaxing. It would be nice to be on a beach right now. White, soft sand, the sound of waves. And him, next to me. As soon as the thought slips through, Taeyoung frowns and turns his head away. Taeyoung, thinking. What nonsense is this? Am I hallucinating or feverish from the injury? Jungkook finishes bandaging and notices the man turning away. Jungkook, cautiously. Did I do something wrong? Taeyoung, quickly, almost brushing it off. No. Just thinking. Taeyoung glances briefly at Jungkook's hands, the same hands that had just been touching his skin, before quickly looking away. Jungkook puts the bandages back into the kit and quietly says, Jungkook, the bleeding has stopped. Hopefully you'll feel better now. Taeyoung, very quietly. You're amazing, Jungkook. Really? Jungkook, unsure if he heard right. Why? At that moment, the door burst open with a loud crash. The lock shattered into pieces, and two men entered the pharmacy. One wore a wide grin, while the other was focused and cold. Hoseok, looking around the pharmacy. There you are, boss. Took us forever to find you. Yoongi dryly. Hope we made it in time. Hoseok hurried over to Taeyoung, helping him to his feet. Hoseok, noticing the bandages. Who did this? Taeyoung, nodding toward Jungkook. Him. He did well, by the way. Hoseok, laughing, patting Jungkook on the shoulder. You're a hero, buddy. We owe you one. Yoongi placed a stack of cash on the counter. Yoongi. Compensation for the trouble. Jungkook stood silent, stunned by the unfolding events. But before they left, Taeyoung turned to him once more. Taeyoung, calmly. Take a vacation. Today. My people will ensure your safety. Jungkook, confused. But why? Taeyoung, cutting him off. Just do it. It's in your best interest. Hoseok, clearly shocked. Boss, are you seriously looking out for a stranger? Yoongi, with a smirk. That's something new. Taeyoung ignores their comments, his eyes still fixed on Jungkook. Taeyoung. Thank you. My name's Taeyoung. They leave quickly, leaving Jungkook utterly confused. The next morning. Taeyoung's mansion. In the spacious bedroom of the mansion, silence reigned, broken only by the soft crackling of the fireplace. Taeyoung sat on the bed, leaning against the headboard, his wounds tightly bandaged. By the bedside, Sejun, the clan's doctor, was busy preparing a painkiller injection. Sichin, with a calm smile. You're lucky the guy at the pharmacy gave you first aid. Without his work, I'd have had a lot more to deal with. Taeyoung. He did well. Sichin gave the injection, then carefully checked the bandages to ensure the wound was clean. Sichin, putting away his tools. Did well? He might have saved your life. Learn to be more grateful, Taeyoung. Sichin could afford to speak to Taeyoung like that. They had been friends since childhood and were like brothers to each other. Taeyoung didn't reply, only giving a slight nod. But his thoughts were clearly elsewhere, lingering in that small pharmacy. A knock on the door broke his reverie. Yoongi, standing at the door, calm but serious. Can I come in? Taeyoung shortly. Speak. Yoongi closed the door behind him and, standing across from the bed, said, Yoongi, it was an ambush. There was a leak. The partner you were supposed to meet was eliminated by the same people before the meeting even started. Taeyoung raised a hand slowly, pinching the bridge of his nose with long fingers, hiding his irritation. Taeyoung quietly, with menace. A rat in the clan? Yoongi nodding. Looks like it. Taeyoung. Where's Hoseok? Yoongi shortly. I'll call him now. Yoongi left the room, leaving Taeyoung alone with his thoughts. A few minutes later, the door creaked open again, and Hoseok appeared, looking slightly more serious than usual. Hoseok calmly. You called, boss? Taeyoung, looking him straight in the eye. Did you find the rat? Hoseok, tilting his head slightly. Not yet. But you'll have a name by the end of the day. Taeyoung. Do it quickly. And quietly. Hoseok nodded and turned to leave, stepping out of the bedroom and leaving Taeyoung in silence once more. Taeyoung leaned back against the headboard again, his gaze heavy. He could feel it. Today was going to be a long day. Pharmacy. Jungkook had been busy since early morning, fixing the broken lock on the front door. The elderly pharmacy owner was helping him, shaking his head in dismay every now and then. Owner sighing. What times we live in! Thieves are getting bolder. Lucky they didn't manage to steal anything. Jungkook, trying to sound convincing. Probably just someone trying to rob the place. I came in time and scared them off. Owner nodding. You're lucky. But why didn't you call the police? Jungkook, gripping the tool in his hand. I didn't think it was necessary. We'll fix the lock, and it won't happen again. In truth, Jungkook had deliberately lied, claiming it was a failed robbery attempt. Something inside him urged him to stay quiet about what really happened. Not to ask questions. Not to give unnecessary explanations. The lock was finally repaired. Jungkook returned to the counter, trying to focus on his work, but his gaze kept drifting toward the window. Parked outside the pharmacy was a car with tinted windows that had been there all morning. Leaning against it were a few large men. They seemed calm, but their presence was far too noticeable to be a coincidence. Jungkook, thinking, looks like these are Taeyoung's men. So, he really kept his word. Conflicting emotions overwhelmed him. On one hand, it was comforting that someone cared enough to ensure his safety. On the other, the situation made him feel trapped. They had even suggested he take a vacation, but that wasn't an option for him. Jungkook, thinking, how would I explain this to my boss? I just started working here. If I leave now, they might just replace me. He couldn't afford that. The job was too important, especially now. Staying in the pharmacy, he tried to act as if everything was normal, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Taeyoung. Jungkook, thinking, glancing at the car outside. Who are you really, Taeyoung? Taeyoung's mansion. In the spacious office, Taeyoung sat behind a massive wooden desk. Documents, charts, and reports were spread out before him. He was focused, his long fingers slowly flipping through the pages. The door quietly creaked open. Hoseok entered, his usual cheerful demeanor subdued, though traces of exhaustion were visible in his expression. Hoseok, closing the door behind him. Boss, I have news. Taeyoung, without looking up from the documents. Speak. Hoseok approached the desk but hesitated briefly, glancing at the papers as if gauging Taeyong's mood. Hoseok. The rat is one of the guards. He's been with us for a few months. His records were well cleaned, so nothing showed up during the background check when we hired him. Taeyong, raising his gaze, his voice cold and firm. Who helped him infiltrate our clan? Hoseok, shaking his head. We don't know yet. But it's clear he didn't act alone. Someone with serious access to databases covered his tracks. He's vanished now. I've sent a team with Yoongi to track him down. Taeyong slowly set the documents aside, clasping his hands together on the desk. Taeyong. I don't like this. Too many coincidences. Hoseok, nodding. I agree. For a simple guard, this level of preparation is suspiciously advanced. Leaning forward, elbows on the desk, Taeyong's voice dropped to a quiet, menacing tone. Taeyong. The guard is just a pawn. Someone with serious power and resources is behind this. Hoseok, serious. Do you think it's the work of another clan? Taeyong. Or someone trying to drive a wedge between us? Find out everything. How he passed the checks. Who gave him this opportunity? Hoseok, resolutely. I'll get to the bottom of it. We'll find him and the one pulling the strings. Taeyong gave a short nod, but his expression remained dark. Taeyong. Act quickly, Hoseok. We don't have much time. Hoseok gave a brief bow and left the office. Taeyong was left alone, his fingers drumming impatiently on the desk. His thoughts swirled around one thing. Someone dared to play this game with me. And I will find them. A few days later, Jungkook stood behind the pharmacy counter, absent-mindedly sorting medicine on the shelves. For days now, he had noticed the same car parked outside, with a group of sturdy men lingering nearby. It had almost become part of his daily routine. Jungkook, thinking, they're here every day. Why not just be polite? Deciding that a small gesture of kindness wouldn't hurt, he brewed 2 cups of coffee and grabbed a few bottles of water. Stepping outside, he approached the men, who immediately tensed up. Jungkook, smiling, offering the drinks. Hi. This is for you. You've been out here all day, so I thought I'd bring you something. One of the men quickly glanced at his partner, as if waiting for approval, before cautiously taking a cup. First guard, shortly. Thanks. Second guard, with a slight smile. Didn't expect this, but thank you. Jungkook gave a slight bow and returned to the pharmacy, feeling their gazes lingering on him for a while longer. He had wanted to ask about Taeyong's condition but doubted they would share any information. Holding back his question, he let out a heavy sigh. Since that morning, Taeyong had been taking up far too much space in his thoughts. The next morning, silence filled Taeyong's office. Once again, Jungkook's face surfaced in his mind. Despite himself, Taeyong found his thoughts drifting to the young man far too often. He longed to see him again, to thank him properly. But he knew that, no matter how strong and brave Jungkook appeared, he was also a kind and naive soul. Taeyong feared dragging him into his criminal world and stealing away Jungkook's chance at a normal life. His train of thought was abruptly interrupted by the sharp sound of the door opening. Hoseok, entering without knocking, walking quickly. Boss, we have a problem. Hoseok, seriously, almost urgently. The guards watching Jungkook are in critical condition in the ICU. Seejun is treating them. Jungkook has been kidnapped. Taeyong froze. His long fingers clenched the armrest of his chair tightly. Taeyong, his voice low and dangerous. Who? Why? Hoseok, frowning, shrugging. We don't know the reasons yet. But it seems the rat, before escaping, somehow learned that you were protecting him. Yoongi entered the room, his movements calm but his eyes tense. Yoongi in a steady voice. The attack happened during a guard shift change. Someone knew their schedule and timed it perfectly. Taeyong frowning. Cameras? Yoongi nodding. I suspect the schedule was drawn up using access to city surveillance footage. That means there's another rat, someone in the police. Otherwise, such access wouldn't have been possible. Taeyoung stood abruptly, walking to the window and staring outside. Yoongi and Hoseok knew this was a dangerous sign. Taeyoung quietly but with menace. They were not supposed to touch Jungkook. Hoseok guiltily. I missed this, boss. I admit it. Taeyoung. It's time to have a word with the chief of police. Namjoon will undoubtedly be thrilled. Taeyoung moved back to his desk, grabbed his jacket, and draped it over his shoulders. He glanced at Hoseok, who was already pulling out his phone to give the necessary orders. Taeyoung. We're leaving in 10 minutes. If anyone interferes with our trip, act swiftly and without hesitation. Hoseok calmly, with a faint smile. As you say, boss. They left the office, each with a clear plan of action. Taeyoung knew the conversation with Namjoon wouldn't be easy, but he couldn't allow anyone to continue threatening him, or especially Jungkook. Police station. The entire station was engulfed in tense silence as Taeyoung walked through the corridors, accompanied by just 2 of his men. The officers avoided meeting his gaze, but whispers followed him down the hall. He ignored them and confidently pushed open the door to the chief's office. Namjoon, looking up from his papers with a smirk. Well, look who's here. The head of the clan himself. Taeyoung, you never failed to surprise. It's a pity you're sitting in my office and not behind bars. Taeyoung, smirking back, taking a seat across from him. Good to see you too, Namjoon. But it seems you have a problem that needs addressing. Namjoon frowned, his tone growing colder. Namjoon. Get to the point. I don't have time for idle chatter. Taeyoung, calmly crossing his arms. Imagine, a respectable police officer like you has people leaking information for kidnappings right under his nose. Looks bad, doesn't it? Namjoon squinted, his expression sharpening instantly. Namjoon. Kidnappings? Be specific. Taeyoung. My men were attacked, and someone I'm protecting was kidnapped. And here's the fun part, the attack coincided with a shift change. I'm certain the information about their schedule came from city surveillance footage. Which means someone in your department either got bought or isn't paying attention to what's happening in their system. Namjoon drummed his fingers on the desk, his gaze tense and calculating. Namjoon. You're implying I have a rat in my department? Taeyoung dryly. I'm stating it. Namjoon leaned back in his chair, silently weighing Taeyoung's words. The silence stretched, feeling like an eternity. Taeyoung stood, heading toward the door. Taeyoung, disappointed. I guess this conversation is over. If you want to play the quiet game, that's your choice. He was nearly out the door when Namjoon's voice stopped him. Namjoon, reluctantly but firmly. Wait. There's something. Taeyoung turned, a flicker of interest crossing his face. Namjoon. The Naxon clan has been making suspicious moves lately. We've been keeping an eye on them. They're the first ones you should check. Taeyoung paused for a moment, thoughtfully licking his lips. Taeyoung. The Naxon clan. Thanks for the lead. He spun on his heel and stormed out of the office, his steps quick and purposeful as he headed for the exit. Taeyoung thinking. If it's them. Jungkook, hold on. I'm coming. Taeyoung exited the police station, his expression calm and composed, but inside him, fury burned like wildfire. A new plan was already forming in his mind. The Naxon clan had long crossed the line, and Namjoon's information was the final straw. Taeyoung, to Hoseok and Yoongi. Gather our strongest men. We need a direct conversation with their leader. No pleasantries. Hoseok nodding, with a faint smirk. Understood, boss. Time to teach these jackhals a lesson. An hour later, 2 cars headed toward the mansion of Naxon's leader, Wanda. Taeyoung, Hoseok, and Yoongi sat silently in the lead vehicle, their focus unshaken. The second car carried trusted fighters from Taeyoung's clan, ready for any scenario. Meanwhile, others from their group moved discreetly around the perimeter, taking strategic positions near Wanda's estate. Yoongi, without taking his eyes off the road. They might be prepared. The Naxon clan has always been cautious. Taeyoung coldly. Let them be. If they start a war, I'll end it first. Sitting in the passenger seat, Hoseok smirked slightly as he checked his weapon. Hoseok calmly. You always say that. But honestly, I like it when we go in straight forward. Taeyoung didn't reply, his gaze fixed on the looming gates of Wanda's estate. High walls surrounded the mansion, and the guards at the entrance seemed visibly reinforced. As soon as the cars stopped, a group of men approached, raising their hands in warning. Naxon guard firmly. Who are you, and what do you want? Taeyoung rolled down the window, his gaze icy and his voice steady but dripping with menace. Taeyoung, I'm here to talk to Wanga. A conversation he won't want to miss. The guards exchanged uneasy glances, clearly not expecting such confidence. One of them pulled out a radio and quickly relayed a message. After a few moments, he returned and gave a reluctant nod. Naxon guard. Drive in. But no tricks. Taeyoung dryly. Follow your own rules, and this will go smoothly. The cars rolled onto the property, the heavy metal gate clanging shut behind them. Taeyoung's sharp eyes scanned the surroundings, noting additional guards and several cameras. Wanda clearly wasn't a fan of surprise visits, but that didn't matter now. A tense silence hung in the air, the kind that always precedes a storm. Taeyoung's fighters remained stationed at the entrance, standing like sentinels, ready to act at the slightest signal. Hoseok, Yoongi, and Taeyoung entered the mansion at an unhurried pace. The atmosphere inside was tense but tinged with a facade of hospitality. They were greeted by Wanga, the head of the Naxon clan. His expression was overly friendly, and his smile reeked of insincerity. He spread his arms as if welcoming an old friend. Wanga, with feigned enthusiasm. What an honor! Taeyoung himself graces my home. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? Taeyoung returned the smile, equally artificial, mirroring Wanga's pretense. He slowly scanned the room as if appraising the surroundings, then stepped closer to Wanga. Taeyoung evenly. I've come to take back what's mine. Wanga raised an eyebrow, his smile widening further, though a flicker of unease passed through his eyes. Wanga, mockingly. Oh? And what might that be, Taeyoung? Surely you don't think I've taken something from you? Taeyoung's smile vanished, his face turning cold, his voice icy. Taeyoung, this isn't up for debate. You have 5 seconds to decide. We do this the easy way or the hard way. He stepped closer, stopping just a few paces from Wanga. Hoseok, standing beside him, casually glanced around the room, though his hand was ready for action. Yoongi remained silent as always, his piercing gaze already assessing the vulnerabilities of everyone present. Wanga smirking, though his voice wavered slightly. You're awfully confident, Taeyoung. Don't forget, you're in my house. Taeyoung firmly. 4-3. The tension in the room became palpable. Wanga slowly rubbed his fingers together, his eyes darting between Taeyoung, Hoseok, and Yoongi. The weight of the countdown pressed on everyone, as if the air itself had thickened with the promise of chaos. Wanga, raising his hands with a smirk. Wait! What's the rush, Taeyoung? That boy, does he really mean so much to you? Taeyoung remained still, his gaze unwavering. Wanga, however, continued, clearly enjoying the moment. Wanga, mockingly. Another plaything in our world, just unlucky enough to get caught in it. You're willing to ruin relations between clans over some pharmacist? Why? And what will you say at the annual clan meeting if you turn this place into a battlefield? Crossing his arms, Wanga exuded an air of unshakable confidence. Taeyoung stayed silent, but just then, Yoongi, standing slightly to the side, felt his phone vibrate. Checking the message quickly, his eyes glinted with a cold fire. Yoongi stepped forward and gave Taeyoung a slight nod, a discreet signal. Taeyoung slowly turned his head, a wide, almost menacing smile spreading across his lips. The message confirmed it. Yoongi now had irrefutable evidence that Wanga was behind the attempt on Taeyoung's life. Taeyoung, smiling, his voice icy. You're far too confident, Wanga. Wanga's smirk faltered, his confidence visibly shaken. Wanga, nervously. What are you? Taeyoung, cutting him off with a soft laugh. The ambush, It was your idea, wasn't it? You thought I wouldn't survive to see today. But to your disappointment, I'm still here. And that means your plans have failed. As Wanga opened his mouth to reply, Hosiak seemed to materialize from the shadows, standing directly behind him with a gun aimed at his head. Hosiak calmly, with a faint smirk. Looks like your luck just ran out, Wanga. Wanga froze, his hands trembling slightly. He started to speak, but didn't finish. A single shot rang out. The room fell into a deafening silence for a split second before Wanga's body collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud. Then chaos erupted. Shouts echoed, and gunfire broke out from every direction. The mansion turned into a battlefield. Taeyoung, sharply, to Yoongi. The prisoner rooms! Yoongi shortly. Follow me. They slipped out of the room, leaving Hosiak to coordinate their fighters. Navigating through the chaos, Taeyoung and Yoongi sprinted down the hallways, dodging stray bullets and neutralizing enemies in their path. The room they were looking for was in a distant wing of the mansion. Yoongi quickly oriented himself and pointed to a heavy, locked door. Yoongi briefly, pulling out his gun. There. With a precise shot, he shattered the lock. The door creaked open, revealing Jungkook inside. Jungkook was sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall. He wore only jeans, his skin pale. Barefoot and shirtless, he looked vulnerable and weak. Taeyoung, rushing to him, his voice filled with concern. Jungkook! Jungkook lifted his head slowly. His eyes were tired, and his lips were dry. Jungkook, weakly, with relief. You came! I'm so glad you're here. Taeyoung began checking him for injuries. Jungkook. I'm fine. They didn't hurt me. His head dropped forward as he lost consciousness, overcome by dehydration and exhaustion. Taeyoung, quickly checking his pulse. He's alive! We need to get him out of here. Yoongi nodded, covering them as Taeyoung carefully lifted Jungkook into his arms. Despite the tense situation, Taeyoung's movements were gentle, as if he were holding something precious. Taeyoung to himself. You're safe now. I promise. The car sped down the empty road, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Taeyoung gripped the wheel tightly, his face focused, but a hint of worry lingered in his eyes. Next to him, Jungkook lay wrapped in Taeyoung's jacket on the seat. Jungkook, murmuring faintly. Taeyoung. Taeyoung glanced at him briefly, his voice softer than usual. Taeyoung. I'm here. Everything's fine. Jungkook half opened his eyes, his gaze unfocused but filled with relief. Jungkook, weakly but sincerely. I missed you so much. Taeyoung's grip on the wheel tightened, his lips twitching slightly, but he said nothing, pressing the accelerator harder. At the mansion gates, they were already waiting. Seechin stepped forward, ready to work. Taeyoung jumped out of the car and carefully lifted Jungkook into his arms. Jungkook, weakly, wrapping his arms around Taeyoung's neck. Don't leave me. Taeyoung softly. Never. He carried Jungkook inside, taking care not to cause him any more discomfort, and laid him gently on the prepared bed. Seechin immediately began setting up for fluids and examining him. Seechin, reassuringly. He's strong. By morning, he'll be fine, just dehydration and exhaustion. Taeyoung nodded but didn't leave, staying by Jungkook's side. His gaze never left Jungkook's face, his mind still replaying the events of the day. A few hours later, Taeyoung stood in the grand hall, where the clan leaders had gathered for an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense. With confidence, he presented evidence of the attack, documents and materials proving that the Naxon clan had deliberately broken all rules. Taeyoung coldly, decisively. This attack wasn't just on me. It's an attack on all of us. The Naxon clan has shown they're a threat to everyone here. Voices rose in agreement, and the majority supported him. The decision was clear. The Naxon clan would be disbanded, and their territories divided among the remaining clans. Several months later, on a stretch of white sand near the water's edge, Taeyoung lay comfortably on a lounge chair. His gaze was fixed on the sea as waves lazily rolled onto the shore. The calm he had been longing for had finally returned. Soft footsteps approached from behind. Someone gently wrapped their arms around his shoulders, leaving a light kiss on the top of his head. Jungkook softly, "Are you happy to be in your favorite place?" Taeyong smiled, tilting his head slightly. "Taeyong, my favorite place is wherever you are." Jungkook settled on the lounge chair next to him. Their eyes met, and in that gaze was everything: gratitude, affection, happiness. Taeyong reached out, taking Jungkook's hand and bringing it to his lips, leaving a gentle kiss on the back of it. Taeyong quietly, "I love you." Jungkook, smiling, "I love you too." They turned their eyes back to the sea, savoring the moment. The soft breeze carried the sound of the waves, as if they were singing their own song of happiness.